with Kennection.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wrestling Connection. I am your host, your connection to the world of wrestling, Mr. Ken Hill. Of course, my good friend Zach Martink, the madman himself, Zach Martinkus, isn't here today. He's out, but I promise that even though you only have half the duo here, I promise to bring you twice the fun here on today's show. We go into this week. This past Sunday, the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, the one night where the WWE goes extreme, and we had some extremely good matches this past Sunday. We start off with the pre-show match, the WLC match between El Torito of Los Matadores and Hornswoggle of 3MB. Now, of course, I mean, this match had everything. It had mini tables, mini ladders, mini chairs. It even had a mini announce team. You had Micro Cole, Jerry the King Smaller, played by famous wrestler Short Sleeve Samson, and JBL. It was a hilarious romp, an absolute delight, ending with El Torito splashing Hornswoggle through a miniature table off a step ladder for the victory. Now we go into the opening match for Extreme Rules, a triple threat elimination match. You had the King of Swing Cesaro accompanied by Paul Heyman. You had Mr. Pay-Per-View himself, Rob Van Dam, and of course you had the now lone real American Jack Swagger, accompanied by his forefather Zeb Coulter. Of course, it was a fast-paced, physical match, plenty of near falls, and the first elimination. You have to remember it was an elimination match. It meant you had to have 2 pinfalls or submissions. The first elimination came when Cesaro deadlift superplexed Jack Swagger. That is, Cesaro was perched on the top rope. Swagger was on the ring apron. Cesaro, just using his strength alone, his upper body strength alone, superplexed Swagger all the way to the mat. And then right after that, before Swagger could even react, here comes RVD coming off the top rope with his 5-star frog splash, eliminating Swagger from the equation. Then it just came down to Cesaro versus RVD. At one point, you had Cesaro swinging around RVD, bashing him off the barricade, uppercutting him time after time after time. RVD just kicking away like he does at Cesaro, and the end came when RVD had Cesaro in prime position after laying him out with a Van Daminator. That is a spinning kick into a trash can being held by Cesaro. That's what the Van Daminator is. Seemingly laying Cesaro out. He goes up top, has the trash can laid on Cesaro, gets ready for the 5-star frog splash. Cesaro moves out of the way at the last second. RVD comes crashing down onto the trash can. Actually, you would see in later photos that he ended up cutting his eye when he hit that trash can. Cesaro picks up a prone RVD, hits the neutralizer, the Gotch-style neutralizer pile driver on RVD, pinning him, and the King of Swing came out on top. Then we move on to the Intercontinental Championship match. The champion, Mr. 5 Count, Big E Langston, going up against, I've got some bad news for you, Mr. Bad News Barrett himself, who would come up through the ranks in the Intercontinental Championship tournament. Once again, another no-holds-barred physical match between two of the toughest, two future cornerstones of the WWE in Big E Langston and Bad News Barrett. Big E was muscling around Barrett half the time, but most of the match. But Barrett bounced right back, and in a big way, nailing Big E Langston with a running bullhammer elbow, pinning him and becoming a 4-time Intercontinental Champion. A fantastic match. Then we move on. Then we move on to the Divas Championship match. The upcoming Paige, fresh off her title win over former champion AJ Lee, having a couple strong defenses against some of the Diva mainstays, came up against a big obstacle this past Sunday at Extreme Rules and won Tamina Snuka, the daughter of Hall of Famer Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And I mean, for a Divas match, it was a lot more physical than it had any right to be. Paige had to withstand a storm of offense from Tamina, at one point being swung into the steel barricade at the ringside barricade, and it seemed like that Tamina was closing in on her first Divas Championship, but Paige would bounce back, storm, and capping off her comeback with a modified scorpion deathlock, making Tamina of all divas, one of the toughest divas around, tap out, picking up a huge win on the pay-per-view stage for Paige in her first big title defense. Then we get into the big matches. We get into the big 3 matches, starting off with the huge 6-man tag team match. The Shield, possibly the greatest faction in wrestling today, going up against one of the greatest wrestling factions of yesteryear in evolution, Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton. Again, it was a back and forth match, near falls aplenty. This match told a great story about 2 warring factions. Who was gonna come up on top here? And it seemed like that Evolution was closing in on the win. Batista had Roman Reigns isolated. Triple H and Orton were beating Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins out into the crowd, keeping them away from their teammate. It seemed like that Triple H and Orton had Ambrose cornered. They tossed him down a flight of stairs. They go down to finish off the job, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, out of the sky, you had Seth Rollins diving out of the air, diving off of a balcony 20 feet above them, out of nowhere, taking out Triple H and Orton. Back in the ring, Roman Reigns counters out of a Batista bomb attempt, nails the Superman punch, then lines up Batista for the spear, nails it, and the Shield pick up possibly the biggest win of their career at Extreme Rules. Now we move on to the second main event of that evening. Bray Wyatt versus John Cena in a steel cage. Now, mind you, building up to this match, Cena asked for this match. Cena asked for a steel cage in order to keep Bray Wyatt and his word and his message contained. But the problem with that was Cena did not take into consideration the Wyatt family members. Eric Rowan, Luke Harper were at ringside constantly keeping Cena from escaping. At one point, Cena was over the cage, only for Rowan to literally get under Cena and actually lift him back into the cage. Cena had no way out. The only way to do it was to drag the Wyatt family members in and keep them in the cage with him and Bray Wyatt. And coming up on the end of the match, it seemed like that Cena was going to come out on top. He was going to be the big hero once again. He was going to walk out, and the Wyatts would be kept where Cena felt they should have always been, inside a cage. Not the case. Suddenly, just as Cena's about to step out the cage, the lights black out. And then you hear this deep, almost demonic voice singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands." And then the lights come back on, and we see this child dressed to look like from a children's choir, singing. He's got the whole, in that deep voice, almost like a demonic voice. He's got the whole world in his hands, and Cena's absolutely stunned. He's absolutely stunned. Bray Wyatt sneaks up on Cena, catches him off guard, hits his finisher, Sister Abigail, pinning Cena. Well, after hitting it, walking out the cage with the Wyatt family, leaving Cena to stew in his own muck. Bray Wyatt defeating John Cena, one of the biggest performers in WWE. Bray Wyatt coming on top of Cena was absolutely was a sight to behold. But now we come to the main event. We come to the main event of the evening. You had the WWE World Heavyweight Championship on the line. The champion, the leader of the Yes Movement. Yes, yes, yes. Daniel Bryan going up against the Demon Kane, the revitalized Demon, the demon of 2003, the Demon who could seemingly not be stopped by anyone, and he proved to be just as implacable here. I mean, this was an Extreme Rules match. Anything goes. You had Bryan using anything and everything to keep Kane down. You had him using Singapore canes. You had him using steel chairs, the steel steps. They fought to the backstage where Bryan was ramming him off the walls, bashing him off of car hoods. At one point, when Bryan felt like he had Kane incapacitated, he actually managed to muscle him onto a forklift, and then taking the forklift, drove him back to ringside, dumped him into the ring, then climbed up on top of the forklift, diving off into a flying headbutt into Kane. And Kane still got up from all this. It was unbelievable. And then Kane comes back, the monster seemingly rising from the dead, just lays out Bryan with a choke slam. He hits a choke slam through the announce table, and Bryan's seemingly out of it. But does Kane want to finish him off there? No, he doesn't. He rolls Bryan back into the ring. He pulls out a table, and then the unthinkable happens. He pulls out a tank of gasoline. He pours it over the table, grabs a portable lighter, and lights the table ablaze. A flaming table, something that wrestling fans had not seen since WrestleMania 2006, the hardcore match, Mick Foley versus Edge, that they hadn't seen since the glory days of Extreme Championship Wrestling, where flaming tables were almost commonplace. No, Kane had a flaming table ready to put Bryan through, but then Bryan shakes the ropes, knocks Kane off into the flaming table. Kane somehow stumbles back into the ring. Bryan hits him with a solid knee plus, his finishing with the running knee, and somehow manages to pin Kane for a 3 count. Just capping off what was a unusual, bizarre, fun, and extremely extreme rules. And believe me, the aftermath, the next night on Raw is something to talk about as we go into this week in review. See this past Monday night on Raw, you had the aftermath. You had the fallout from the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. You had, even though the Shield came out on top in their feud against Evolution, the match, the war, they won the fight, but the war was far from over. You see, Triple H, being the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, he pulled some strings. The first match of the night for Raw was a 20-man over-the-top rope battle royal for Dean Ambrose's United States Championship, which Dean had held for a calendar year, for nearly 350 days, almost a full year. and it was on the line in a 20-man over-the-top battle royal. Triple H pretty much just sticking it to the Shield. And I mean, you had everyone in there. You had Titus O'Neil. You had Sheamus. You had 3MB. You pretty much had any superstar in there wanting to be United States champion. You had Mr. Battle Royal himself, Kofi Kingston, wondering what crazy stunt he was going to pull off. You had Curtis Axel. You had Ryback. You had so many participants in this match that literally anyone could have come out United States champion. By some miracle, Dean Ambrose, the champion, the current champion, managed to survive all the way to the final two between him and the Celtic Warrior Sheamus. But as soon as Ambrose managed to get rid of the Real American Jack Swagger, he turned right around into Sheamus's brogue kick. Essentially, and Sheamus, a 275-pounder with a scissors kick. You get hit by that, you're essentially out. You're done. And it was lights out for Ambrose. Sheamus picked up the prone Ambrose, tosses him over the rope, and we have a new United States champion in Sheamus, which was, in hindsight, it was for the best. Dean Ambrose wasn't doing anything with the United States Championship, and Sheamus had more or less been spinning his wheels since he had returned from injury earlier this year. So in the sense, it was for the best. But then a blockbuster match was made by Triple H, saying the Shield's night was not over yet. They would have a titanic rematch: the Shield versus the Wyatt family. Once again, the two biggest factions in wrestling today squaring off once again in the fourth installment. It was bound to be a great match. Surprising absence on Raw was Mr. John Cena. Of course, you had the Wyatts crow. You had Bray Wyatt crowing about his victory from Extreme Rules. You couldn't help but think, where's Cena in all this? What's his response going to be? And we wouldn't find out until the next night on WWE Main Event that Cena admitted he failed. He let the message get through, but he was not going to stop. He was, one way or another, he would get Bray Wyatt back. So that feud seemingly continuing towards the next WWE pay-per-view, WWE Payback. And we can only wait and see next week to find out how this saga between Bray Wyatt and John Cena is going to continue. And hopefully it won't be with another merchandise shill with the C Nation towel that Cena so subtly displayed at the end of his serious promo this past Tuesday. Of course, you had the Divas. You had Hornswoggle and El Torito, the two small men, seemingly come to a truce, only to come to blows over a Cinco de Mayo celebration. Went about as well as you would expect. This just boggled my mind, because you had two wrestlers in Los Matadores who supposedly are Spanish matadors, but are in actuality Puerto Rican, celebrating Cinco de Mayo. There's something culturally offensive about that. I don't know what, but it just cracked me up a little bit. Anyway, moving on. You had, like I said, you had the Wyatt family talking, like you had Bray Wyatt crowing about his victory and saying that in his promo against John Cena that he was doing this for the masses. He was doing this for those who never got to go to prom. He was doing this for those who were picked on. He was doing those for the people that were oppressed, that were isolated, that were ostracized growing up. He was doing this for them. And then he ended the promo essentially proclaiming himself to be a god. And you can't help but feel like that was the whole buildup. That people would the way his message was spreading, the way that he has seemingly turned the WWE universe, the C Nation against John Cena. You can't help but feel like that he's just had this overwhelming effect on people. And I mean, he's made it loud and clear. He considers himself to be a god, and it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see where the whole Cena Wyatt debacle goes from this point on. Because frankly, who knows? I think there's going to be some big blow off coming up here at WWE Payback between Wyatt and Cena. Personally, I hope Wyatt comes out on top of this, because you have had Cena proclaiming himself to be the measuring stick, to essentially to be that proverbial bouncer at the door, daring the new breed of superstars, the new breed of wrestlers that get past him. So my hope is that Bray Wyatt is considered the future of the WWE, and that Cena considers him the future and puts him over at the next pay-per-view. Puts him over cleanly. In other words, Bray Wyatt pins Cena to the mat, 1, 2, 3. No magic, no demon, no possessed singing children, none of that. Bray Wyatt beats Cena straight up, and that Bray Wyatt can be considered the future of WWE. Possibly the next Mick Foley, the next Mankind, maybe even the next Undertaker with all his mysticism and macabre and mind games and tactics. Maybe. Of course, then you had the Wyatt family main eventing against the Shield. Once again, another barn burner of a match, a four-star affair between these six men. And then it seemed like the Shield were closing in on victory. You had Roman Reigns laying out Bray Wyatt with the Superman punch. He was laying out for the spear. He was getting ready to take Bray Wyatt out and claim victory for the Shield. Here comes Evolution. Walt's just sauntering down to the ring, seemingly distracting Reigns long enough for Wyatt to come in, hit the Sister Abigail, and come away with a victory for the Wyatt family. And then you had Evolution come in and pick the bones of the Shield, just beating them soundly, just laying them out. And you know that this whole saga, this feud is going to continue. You know that the war, like I said, the fight at Extreme Rules, the Shield won. The Shield won that fight. The war is far, far from over. Now, someone in particular of Evolution that I wanted to call out for this week's Ken's Den someone that I wanted to call out for this week in Ken's Den has made a lot of noise to WWE officials, how he's been underutilized, how he wasn't promised what he was promised when he first came back. And I'm talking about one Mr. Dave Batista, one of the new stars coming up in this year's blockbuster classic, Guardians of the Galaxy. When Batista came back, he was promised the world. He was promised a main event at WrestleMania. He was promised a WWE World Heavyweight Championship run. But since he came back, he's lost to Daniel Bryan, and he got pinned by Roman Reigns this past Sunday at Extreme Rules. Now, do I feel for Dave? Because he for the most part, he's been shafted as far as what he was promised. Yes, but the problem is he doesn't see the big picture here. He's helping to put over two of the future superstars of WWE in Daniel Bryan and the Shield's Roman Reigns, who is in many respects like Batista. He's big, he's powerful, he's got the look, he's got the skill, he's got a lot of what Batista brought many moons ago when he first came up as a part of when Batista first came up as a part of Evolution. I mean, what boggles my mind is that Batista fails to see this big picture. I mean, he's supposed to be going away, doing more promotional work for Guardians of the Galaxy, and you think he would want to do that. He would want to leave on a good note, but no, he's whining and crying about how he didn't get his championship run, how he didn't get his big victory. The problem is, even though he has steadily improved since he's come back, he's gone back into ring shape, and we've seen more quality matches out of Dave. The problem is, he's not the main eventer. He's not in the spotlight anymore. Daniel Bryan is. The Shield is. The Wyatt family is. Who are younger, stronger, faster. They come across better. And when Batista was on air, when Dave was seemingly screwed out of his WWE World Heavyweight Championship opportunity, I mean, he lashed out more at Triple H. He blamed everyone else but himself. He blamed everyone else for his shortcomings. He blamed everyone else for coming up short against Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, even though he was the one who tapped out. Dave. You would think that growing older would make you wiser. It would make you wise to the fact that for all your bravado, that for all your talent, okay, you're a bit player. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're a bit player with an essential part. You're there to help you to utilize talent, to help motivate them, to help get them over, to mold them into the next big superstar, which was exactly the position you were in 9 years ago when Triple H put over you in 3 straight pay-per-views at WrestleMania, at Backlash, and at Vengeance in that barbaric Hell in a Cell match. He put you over. And the fact that you can't do the same for him, you can't do the same for Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns and others. You're going to complain about that just because you felt like you didn't get your moment in the sun come back. You got your moment in the sun when you came back and won the Royal Rumble, which no one wanted you to sit. No one wanted to happen. No one wanted to see you win the Royal Rumble. No one wanted to see this 40-something come back and take the spot away from a great potential main event in Roman Reigns or Daniel Bryan. No one wanted to see that. If you would just keep your mouth shut, if you would just do what you're supposed to do and help put these guys over, and for once, leave WWE on a good note when you go to do your promotional work for your new movie, which, by the way, you're not even the star in. So instead of bragging about being Mr. Hollywood, instead of bragging about all and saying you have better things to do your part, leave on a good note, and hopefully fans will actually be a little more excited the next time you decide to make a comeback. Now moving on, switching up gears to a new segment. A new segment in the show is what I like to call Diss-Kennected. And it's a little different. It's a little different from Ken's Den. Not necessarily that I'm calling out a superstar, meaning I'm pointing out the fallacy of a certain wrestler's character. Essentially, just what the main point of their character was supposed to be, and just how far it's fallen off the beaten path. How far it's fallen from what they were intending to. And the one I want to point out for this week's Diss-Kennected is the former intellectual mind of the masses, intellectual savior of the masses, one Mr. Damien Sandow. I mean, Mr. Sandow, I mean, when you first came in here, you had this haughty, stuck up personality. Like you had this smug intelligence about you, much like the genius genius Lanny Poffo from way back in the day, in the olden days of WWF. You had that smug intelligence that people just could not stand. They wanted to get a piece of you, and yet you came off it so well. You were articulate. You believed you were the future. You were the savior of the WWE. That you would bring culture. You would bring innovation. You would bring a new sense of class and refinement to the WWE with your great intelligence. And yet, in the last couple of years, aside from your failed tag team outing with Cody Rhodes as part of the Rhodes Scholars, great name by the way, this year, late last year, after you won the Money in the Bank match, you had an opportunity for a World Heavyweight Championship. An opportunity that every person who has ever held it every person but one superstar had ever cashed in and successfully won the championship. Almost guaranteed world championship reign. You cash it in against a prone John Cena for the World Heavyweight Championship late last year. And even though you came out just short, even though you came out just a little bit short, it seemed like that you were ready to enter into a program with Cena, that you were ready to pursue him to the ends of the earth, that you made a vow to erase John Cena from the annals of WWE history and establish yourself in his place. And since then, what have you done? You have just vanished. You have gone from calling out John Cena to dressing up in a Magneto outfit and calling out Hugh Jackman when he made his guest star appearance on WWE Raw. And then wrestling in said Magneto outfit the next few days later on SmackDown. Which just Mr. Sandow, I would love to think that there is some bounce back for you here. I would love to think that there's an opportunity for you to come back here, to revitalize your character, to bring you back to the point where you were the intellectual savior to the masses. But the problem is that you just dug such a hole for yourself that I'm not even sure anyone could pull you out, much let alone want to pull you out. You have dug yourself such a hole, I don't know what. But I think the way that Sandow can do this is that he needs to go back down to developmental. He needs to go back down to NXT. Bring his character back to what it once was. Bring it back to his former glory. To when what really mattered was bringing culture and class and intelligence to the WWE. Bring that snarky, smug, intelligent character back. Then I think Sandow could possibly be considered for a future in WWE, a future role in WWE. Until then, but for now, Sandow, if you're just going to continue to be the butt of everyone's joke, good luck making it to the end of this year. Now, to end the show, I have a particular wrestler that I want to profile this week, the leader of the Wyatt family, the messiah of the Wyatt family, one Mr. Bray Wyatt.
Toca la clave, suena el bongo, hazme tumbao que el ritmo lo pongo yo.
Now, of course, Bray Wyatt wasn't always the smooth-talking, somewhat creepy, spider-walking charmer that he is now. He originally was known as Husky Harris, the son of famed WWE Hall of Famer Mike IRS Rotunda. He came up through the second season of WWE's developmental program and NXT as Husky Harris, being mentored by another second-generation superstar in one Cody Rhodes. Of course, Harris would end up being the runner-up. End up being a runner-up in the second season. Would come up as part of the new generation of the famed faction known as the Nexus, but shortly after got sent back to developmental after being punted out of the Nexus by one Randy Orton. Down there, Husky Harris took on a new attitude, so to speak, a new persona, just seemingly transforming over the next couple of years into this, again, this smooth talking, this soulful, the bizarre, almost demonic personality that would come to be known as Bray Wyatt. And he had sort of that southern preacher vibe to him. He was a smooth talker. He pretty much, the things he said, lashing out against the ills of society. He would come up through the ranks of NXT. He was slowly amassing followers, such as Luke Harper and Eric Rowan at his side, providing him muscle, providing him physical support into the emotional and mental vibes that he would send out. Essentially, the Wyatt family would slowly build and build and build to the point where it was the biggest faction in NXT, that it seemed like that no one could stop it. And then the Wyatt family got the green light up to WWE. You had all these promos and vignettes just highlighting how bizarre the Wyatt family was. At one point you had a reporter, a WWE reporter, going out to the Wyatt family's homestead, where it was dimly lit. You heard bizarre chanting, the whole 9 yards, and then you just had Bray Wyatt illuminated by a bare bulb, preaching about his coming to the WWE and how it was the end of our world, and the beginning of his. And then since the Wyatt family made their impact, since the Wyatt family has made their debut, they have run roughshod over everyone. While Bray Wyatt's been delivering his message to the WWE Universe, he and Rowan and Harper have run roughshod over all the superstars, over mainstays like Kofi Kingston and R-Truth, just running through them like a hot knife through butter, just delivering their message and not only delivering their message, but beating it into them at the same time. Seemingly no one could stop the Wyatt family. And Bray himself was just this charismatic leader that people just came drawn to. You didn't know why. You couldn't explain it. You just found yourself repeating his message: follow the buzzards. Believing in what the Wyatt family brought to the table, believing what the Wyatt family was preaching, and that was the best part. You had someone in Bray Wyatt, only 26 years of age, the same age as me. This character delivering promos that I think that men 10 years his senior could wish they could do. They could deliver a promo so smooth, so crisp, so verbally intoxicating that it just drew people. That it's just drawn people in, and you have almost whenever he comes out to the song "Catching Flies in His Mouth." When you hear the clapping in the song, you can hear the entire audience clapping along with them. Walking out the complete darkness, carrying that single lit lantern down, sitting in his old rocking chair, and delivering his message to the WWE Universe. And it was with that mindset that I believe that Bray Wyatt is not only going to become a cornerstone of WWE for years to come, but I believe, and I mean, you had Mick Foley, the bizarre Mick Foley, the man, the three faces of Foley. Mankind, you had Mankind, you had Cactus Jack, you had Dude Love, you had Mick Foley himself being a fan of Bray Wyatt and the message he brought and the way he delivered it. The mind games, the emotions, all what Bray Wyatt brings to the table is what Mick Foley brought to the WWE once upon a time, when he had his all these different personas. And so if you have someone like Mick Foley, one of the legends, one of the greats of WWE, backing Bray Wyatt, it is my belief that Bray Wyatt will be he'll be a stalwart of WWE for years to come. Now, coming up on next week's show, we have the continuing Wyatt John Cena saga, the continuing war between between Shield and Evolution. We'll have Cesaro. What will the King of Swing Cesaro do next with Paul Heyman at his side? Will Paul Heyman continue to talk on and on about his client? Brock Lesnar ended the streak. It remains to be seen. Although that last one, I think we can pretty much guarantee, since Paul Heyman can never shut his mouth. All of that, and more coming to you next week, and hopefully my good friend Zach Martinkus will be back at my side next week. In the meantime, ladies, gentlemen, and wrestling fanatics, get connected, be connected, stay connected. You have a good night.
The Wrestling Connection.